In this video, we'll be talking about the various racials of the humans in WoW, from vanilla all the way to Shadowlands. First up, we have Perception, which was an ability added at launch with humans and was the only active racial abilities that the humans had. What it did was, on a 3-minute cooldown, it would increase your stealth detection by 50 points, or 10 levels. It was mostly used for PvP to catch rogues and druids in stealth, before they could open up on you. And for that, it was pretty good at its job. The extra 10 levels of stealth detection counteracted the rogue's Master of Deception talent, which would decrease their chance to be detected in stealth by a similar amount. Next up, we have a 2-for-1 spot with a sword and Mace Specialization. These both do the exact same thing, but for different weapons. Sword Specialization grants you a +5 to your 1- and 2-handed sword skills, giving you, at max level, around an extra 3% chance to hit with swords, and reducing the amount of glancing blows you would deal. And Mace Specialization does the same thing, just for maces and 2-handed maces. And throughout vanilla, the best weapons for warriors were predominantly swords and maces, making humans both an excellent PvP option, as well as the best option for warriors on the Alliance in general. The fourth human racial is the Human Spirit. This is very simple. It granted a 5% increase to the spirit stat, a good bonus for priests and leveling in general, as spirits sped up your health and mana regeneration. The last of the original human racials is Diplomacy. It gives humans a 10% increase to reputation gains with all factions. And this is the longest lasting unchanged ability that is still in the game today. From the day vanilla launched in 2004 to today, Diplomacy has never been changed in any way. The only other ability to go so long without a change was the Rogue's Cheap Shot ability, which didn't receive a single change until Shadowlands, when they lowered its combo point generation to only 1, down from 2. Later on in vanilla, there were a few changes to the human racials. Perception had its range increased in patch 1.4, and then later in 1.8, they made it so it could be used while in stealth, making human rogues even better, as they now have advantage to finding enemy rogues, as whichever rogue opens up on the other generally wins in a 1v1 situation. In patch 2.3 of the Burning Crusade, all of the weapon skill racials were changed to give a +5 expertise instead of a +5 weapon skills, and this affected Mace and Sword Specialization as well. The Burning Crusade was light on changes for the human racials, but maybe they were just saving up changes, as Wrath of the Lich King had quite a few. In Wrath of the Lich King, humans got a completely new racial in Every Man for Himself. This was basically an extra PvP trinket, because what it did was, on a 2-minute cooldown, it would remove all movement impairing effects and all effects which cause loss of control of your character. This effect shares a cooldown with other similar effects. At the same time this was added, Perception was reduced down to be a passive skill, and now only gave 5 points of stealth detection, or 1 level, but even if they lost out on the stealth detection, an extra trinket effect was really good for PvP. Later on in Wrath, Every Man for Himself was fixed, as it had a bug where sometimes it would disconnect you if you used it while rooted, which is a pretty weird specific bug. During Wrath was the only time when humans had all 6 of their racials at the same time, and it's been all downhill since. In Cataclysm, Perception was removed outright, as its niche as the PvP racial was now filled up by Every Man for Himself, which they seem to find to be too powerful, as they increased its cooldown from 2 minutes up to 3 minutes. Because with the human racial, humans didn't actually need to use the PvP trinket, which could break a CC, which means human players could use 1 more DPS trinket than all other races, giving them a big advantage in PvP. A little while later, in patch 4.06, they reverted the cooldown of Every Man for Himself back down to 2 minutes, and the widely known community manager at the time, Ghostcrawler, said that we believe we over-nerfed it when talking about the ability. Then in patch 4.1, Every Man for Himself saw another change, but this time it was just a new visual effect, and the Human Spirit had the spirit bonus it granted reduced from 5% down to 3%. And also during Cataclysm, the weapon skills racials had their expertise bonus decreased from a +5 to a +3, bringing the bonus they provided from 1% to just under it at around 0.75%. Also, Mace Specialization was given to Dwarves too at this time, so now 2 different races had this racial. Mist of Pandaria saw no direct changes to any of the human racial abilities, but the expertise stat was modified to also grant spell hit. So as long as you had either an axe or mace equipped in your main hand, you would get extra expertise and spell hit from the Mace or Sword Specialization. Weirdly though, you didn't get the bonus if the weapon was in your offhand. Not that many casters could even put weapons in their offhand anyway. Warlords of Draenor came with a lot of nerfs for human racials. Sword and Mace Specialization were removed from the game, and while dwarves got the racial Might of the Mountain to replace Mace Specialization, which is a 2% bonus to critical strike and healing damage, humans got nothing to compensate for their loss. The human spirit was also completely redesigned to now, instead of giving 3% spirit, it gave a flat amount of versatility that scaled with level. Moving on to Legion, it was another round of nerfs. Every man for himself was altered, so now it only removes stun effects and no longer can be used to remove all movement impairing effects. Though it was partially bugged at launch and still worked like its old version, so a week later into the expansion they fixed it so that you could no longer activate it on abilities that it couldn't actually break. The human racial had dominated as one of the best PvP racials for a while, so this was an effort to curtail human dominance in PvP. The human spirit was also altered so that instead of the flat versatility increase it got in WoD, it now just gives 2% more to all secondary stats, which could probably go either way if you think this is a buff or a nerf. Since Legion, the only thing that's changed about the human racials was every man for himself, which in Battle for Azeroth had its cooldown increased to 3 minutes, and had the shared cooldown with similar effects like the Gladiator's Medallion increased from 30 seconds up to 90 seconds. Then in Shadowlands, it had its name changed from Every Man for Himself to Will to Survive, and removed the part of the tooltip that mentioned the 90-second shared cooldown. With Blizzard trying to make racials less and less important, making them around only a 1% difference between each other, it makes sense that they nerfed all of the racials so heavily, because the human racials were kind of too good. And with that, that's it. History of human racial abilities. Interestingly, with Every Man for Himself having a name change, you could argue they both have the newest racial ability in Will to Survive, even newer than the allied races of BFA, while also having the oldest and longest lasting ability in the game with Diplomacy.